you guys, it's Teresa and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a very spoiler-filled review on the sequel to Fire and Stars, and that is Of Ice and Shadows by Audrey Coulthurst. So I have a fair bit amount of things to talk about, so let's just get into it. Also, if you didn't catch me in the beginning, this is going to be very spoiler-filled because this is like the sequel to both Ink Mistress, which was the prequel, and Of Fire and Stars, which is like the original book, so giving you a warning that if you're not ready, there will be spoilers in this one. So if you were thinking that this was not going to be spoiler filled, you are very, very wrong, and I suggest you click away like now. But for those of you guys who don't know, Of Ice and Shadows essentially picks up right after the events of Fire and Stars. We see Mare and Denna make their way to Zamorda, a kingdom near them that has been known to support magic users. So that way, Mare told her brother that she wanted to go to build a relationship with the kingdom, and what better way to do it than by using his sister, his only living relative really. But they're also using it as a way for Denna to find like a mentor to help her get her magic in check. So we see a lot of like a little bit of threads here, but the main kind of thread that we're going with is that Mena? I almost said Dare and then I said Mena, and I just made two ship names without meaning to. Is that Denna needs to go ahead and control her powers because they are very uncontrollable right now and it's very dangerous. Let's go start off the things I didn't like, because I feel like this list needs to be a little bit more explained than the things that I did like. One of the things I didn't really like in this book was that we didn't see Mare grieve. In the previous book, we saw her talk about her mother, her deceased mother, quite frequently. We see her refer back to her as often as she possibly can and make references to her. Here we are dealing with in this book, we are dealing with the aftermath of Mare having lost her uncle, having lost her best friend, her father, and like the span of a few months, as well as her having to leave her home to help Denna find a mentor, and leave literally her only brother, whose relationship she's just beginning to patch up, alone to kind of handle the kingdom. And we didn't see her grieve at all. We see her mention that she misses her uncle Cass. We see her that she misses her best friend Nils, and she tears up once, and then that's it. We didn't see her process any of it. We didn't see her really think about what she misses about them, and I just felt like the entire plot of the first book was gone because she didn't mourn them in the slightest at all. It was very as a passing thought, and it just felt like it needed to be more, because when her mother was brought up in this book, she shut down a lot faster than she did when her uncle and when Nils was mentioned and when her father was mentioned. So it was really kind of disappointing, because I feel like we could have gone with a thread there for Mare and add some complexity to her character, if that makes sense, to have her mourn both her mourn so much of her family in the span of one book. In the beginning, I got really annoyed with the constant declarations of love at the end of every chapter. I get it. They are the title characters. They are the main couple. They are the only couple. However, I feel like at the end of every chapter, we shouldn't be hearing a Mare mention how Denna's the only thing she has left in the world, or how Denna's I sacrificed everything to be with this girl. We get it, you guys. This is the second book. We read the first one. We know what happened, what sacrifices you guys had to make to be with each other. We don't need a full-on synopsis about what happened at the end of every chapter, and it had me rolling my eyes a lot, because I feel like we could have used some of that page time where they were just consistently explaining how much they are the only thing for each other, how I sacrifice so much, and da-da-da-da-da. We could have gotten a bit more of explanation about the world and the world's building, which, going into my next point, I like that Audrey has definitely tried in this book. We see that she has tried to develop her world building a bit more, but I still don't understand it. We see her build up limitations for the magic users. We see her create a world where magic is fine, and we can see how it works and how overdoing yourself does have some consequences, but there are still some unanswered questions can people only have a manifest? Can you have a manifest, can you gain a manifest without an affinity? Or I don't know what happens with that. How does Queen Invasaya have so much magic that she can read, insert herself into Denna's mind and transform and not seem burnt out? Where are the rest of the demigods? Are there demigods left that are in hiding? why did the gods leave again? Because I feel like if you didn't read Ink Mistress, you wouldn't know who the queen was, why she's a dragon, why she's 200 years old, who these demigods are, and all of these little things. And I just feel like she tried. So I'm going to give her points for trying, but it just wasn't enough. And I feel like for a second book, especially given the amount of time we were with Denna and Mare's like pining for each other, we could have gotten a lot more. And the last thing that I didn't like was that I was looking through some reviews after I had read the book, and I agree that with some people when they were saying that there feels like there are a lot of threads going on with this. We have Denna and her training, we have Denna and her lineage, we have Denna and Mare's like main line, we have Mare struggling with her identity in this new world, Mare struggling to figure out what she wants to be, Mare trying to train, this assassin situation going on, the concept learning about this new world, and it's just a lot of random threads being put together but not really coming together in a satisfying way. I feel like there is a lot of things that could go perfectly well with this book, but we just needed more time. And I feel like had we gotten rid of some of the exposition and some of the pining, we would have had more time, or had Audrey been given more page time, the ending would not have felt so rushed, and I would not feel like there was something missing, but in a bad way. I feel like there are a lot of things that could have gone really well with this book, but we didn't get to see it because it just felt really hurried to wrap everything up. And there are still some open threads that, albeit can be reopened in the, or like continued upon and expanded on in the third book, but for the second book and where it ends at the current moment, I don't think it was a very satisfying conclusion. I would have liked to have seen more page time and have seen more explanation and everything, and just more, because I feel like this was really rushed toward the end of it. Moving on to things I did like the main source of tension for Mare and Denna, because it wasn't about them per se, it was about everything else happening. Denna couldn't get a hold of her powers, and Mare doesn't understand that very well, and on top of that, Mare is dealing with the fact that she has to be this diplomat, this very charismatic person in front of these strangers where she has no training in, she is uncomfortable in this situation. So I like that these responsibilities they had and these problems they had were external and kind of bearing down on top of them. It was very humanistic, it wasn't very light and fluffy like, oh my god, we still love each other no matter what. Which is fine as well, but I liked seeing that there was some tension in this relationship and some kind of, and the tension made sense. It wasn't like randomly thrown miscommunication. It wasn't, oh yeah, we just didn't talk about it. We decided not to talk about it. I did one thing, she did another thing, and we just fell apart. It was a lot of random bits that kind of worked together to make it a very human aspect in this very non-human world. The other thing is that I really like seeing the connections with Ink Mistress. After reading Ink Mistress, I had really struggled to see where we would continue to see the these characters continue like in the next previous books, but it's nice to have seen Queen Invasa, there we go. Queen Invasa make a return in this story and see how she's connected to Denna and how she's still doing after all these years. And I was also very happy to see that Astra was doing really well as well, or like the mentions of her. So that was nice, and I liked how Audrey managed to make them all fit together in this book. I also loved all the characters. Like once we split Denna and Mare far apart from each other and Denna went off to training and Mare did her own thing, we got to see more of the characters and we really got to see Denna and Mare progress. Though I think that Denna's progression is my favorite because we see her go from this really quiet, kind of timid girl to this really like powerhouse of a princess who like still remains to herself to her core, but also knows that like, hey, I need to do these things for myself, and just because I love you doesn't mean that I'm going to keep like sacrificing everything for you. I have to do this for me. And that was a really like nice thing to see, given the fact that they were still like in this very lovey-dovey kind of cutesy fartsy part of the romance. I also really loved the minor characters. They were so cute. Like Faye was so precious and I loved her, and like low-key embedding on the fact that Faye's father was Alec, but we'll never know because Alec died. I'm very upset with that still, because she always builds up these wonderful like male characters that are like side characters and then just kills them off. Like, it's fine, you know, we get it, like we have to, people gotta die, and sometimes the male ones gotta go, and I'm okay with that. But damn it, I just really wanted to know if Faye was his kid. That's all I needed to know. But that never happened, and I'll probably never get an answer to that. But it's fine. Time for my overall rating and review. I gave this, I believe, a 3.5 out of 5 stars, which isn't that much higher than what I had given of Fire and Stars and Ink Mistress. I like this book. I would continue reading on with the series. I would recommend it to you, but I feel like Audrey still has a long way to go in terms of world building, because that was definitely lacking, as well as the pacing of her book. Because while this first book and the prequel were paced fairly well, this one was like, it suffered from second book syndrome, where it was like paced really achingly slowly with some scenes that felt really unnecessary, and probably were if I were to give this a second reread, but then sped up really fast and came to a really abrupt conclusion. So can't wait to see what else she comes up with. I'm sure that her third book will be just as great, if not better, but 3.5 out of 5 stars would highly recommend still. So yeah. But that is it for this review. I feel like this was a pretty short review, but who knows? I never know until I check the time stamp. So until next time, please leave me comments down below of books you want me to see reviewed, or other kind of bookish or writing content you want me to do on the channel. Hit like, subscribe. I upload twice a week. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys everywhere else. Bye!